It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast presented by Smoky Mountain Organics, Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store. 4 stores to serve you: Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville. Of course, their location in Knoxville, right across from Trader Joe's on Kingston Pike. You can check them out online at their website at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. Smoky Mountain Organics features the best brands in CBD products, bath and body care items, organic teas. They have the largest selection of plant therapy essential oils in Tennessee, and much, much more. Check them out at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. If you're making an in-store purchase, mention Volquest and you'll get 15% off of your total purchase. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. Guys, plenty of mailbag questions to get into. We'll get as many as we can in here and answer them the best as we can. We'll start out with Z-Vol, who wants to know this. Ben McKee mentioned in the Monday night chat that the receiver struggles may be due in large part to bad practice habits or bad habits developed during practice. Could any of the Volquest staff provide any more context or insight around this comment and the receiver struggles? Don't mean to be over top in asking this, but do you get a sense that there's a disappointment around the program and or from Heupel around Cody Burns' performance as an assistant to this point? Is there a chance that Burns may not be back next season? Just thought Ben's comment was kind of eye-opening, and I'm curious to understand the situation there more. I don't think Josh Heupel has discontent or disappointment with Cody Burns at this point. I think Ben's comment stems from comments that Jason Swain has made on the Swain event, which he co-hosts with Jason every morning. Jason, a former receiver himself, obviously has been to practice and seen some things, and I think there's some things that Jason probably feels like that receiving core could be a little tighter about on the practice field. I personally haven't seen anything to really comment on any more than I would. Jason Swain's a former receiver in the SEC. So obviously he's got great insight to how receiver play goes in this league. And I think that is where those comments that Ben made in the chat stem from him. So that's kind of all I know about that deal. Apple Orange wants to know, in your opinion, why is Harrison Bailey not getting a chance to play? Anybody want to take that one, or you want me to take that one?
Because he's not consistent enough in practice. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And again, Harrison's going to have a choice to make. Does he sit in here and continue to develop and see what happens? Or does he do like a lot of other kids around the country when they're not playing and look for the portal? I mean, I think that's going to be the decision he has to make. So I think, barring an injury or two, I just don't see him seeing the field the rest of the year unless it's in mop-up duty against South Alabama. So, I just think he has to be more consistent in practice. And for 2 straight staffs, he has not been that. And that's why he's not found the field for 2 straight, staffs.
And Rob, Josh Heupel saying on Vol Calls Wednesday night that Hendon Hooker was moving closer to 100%, had been on the practice field, had maybe not done as much work as he had the previous week, but moving towards playing. Sounds like he's going to be able to go. Austin had, we had that in the 2-minute drill earlier this week as well. That's a big deal for Tennessee because Hooker's, to me, separated himself from everybody. In large part, I think he may be the most competitive of the guys in the group too. I mean, I think that, that's something as this offense grows that is important as well. But I mean, that's a big deal if Tennessee can get Hendon Hooker on the field on Saturday in terms of their chances of winning at Missouri or having a chance to win at Missouri.
Yeah, I think that, and this, no disrespect to Hendon, but I think that says about as much about Joe Milton as it does him to this point. I just think Hooker's been more consistent, and he's obviously dynamic with his feet, but he's not made many wow plays with his arm. The throw to Javonte Payton was a really good one. He had the one big miss to Jacob Warren, but he played excuse me. He played a turnover-free game against the best defense that he's seen so far, which kind of leads me to believe he's settling in a little bit. And, I'm sure there were some moments on film that were teaching moments on Sunday, but he's not seeing nearly the kind of defense this week that he saw in Gainesville.
No, not at all. Now this is a defense that'll get after the quarterback if they can get you in third and long. Tennessee's got to avoid that. But the running game should be Hendon Hooker's friend on Saturday in Missouri, given what Missouri has given up
He's
to
not
this
gotten a
point.
lot of help from his offensive line either. I mean, Tennessee's given up 12 sacks. That's the most in the league by a few.
Yeah, and Missouri has 14 sacks on the season. Speaking of that offensive line, East Schaefer 92 wants to know, when Cooper is healthy, he looks like a very gifted offensive lineman and will continue to get better. Does his lack of size factor into how high his ceiling is as a potential all SEC prospect? Seems like he holds his own very well for being sometimes much smaller than some defensive linemen he is lined up against. Thought it was interesting, Austin, doing Tennessee Prime on Tuesday night. Cade Mays talked about how freaky of an athlete Darnell Wright is. And Darnell talked about how Cooper's a better athlete than anybody would ever know that he is. Because we were talking about basketball players, and Darnell was talking about, his hoop game. And I said, who's got the best hoop game, on the offensive line outside of you? And he's like, well, basically nobody. And he said, but Cooper can do some freaky things athletically. And they pointed out a play. Darnell pointed out a play where he basically blocked from his knees and was able to bounce back up. I do think the question is, how physical can Cooper get? And that's something that he's been fighting and dealing with right since he was at Catholic, in terms of getting big and how big can he get? If you got enough guard help around you, how big do you have to get, right?
Well, correct. I mean, Cooper's about 6'2", 6'3". He's right about 300 pounds. When he was in high school, his sophomore and junior years, he basically played at 240 pounds. His senior year, he got up to around 280. And then, has since gotten bigger and got up to 300. But, he is a very good athlete, has really good feet. I in high school, I actually liked him on the defensive line as much as I did the offensive line. He single-handedly kept, Catholic in the game against Central in the semis, his senior year before they lost that game to the Bobcats. So, I do agree. Cooper's a really good athlete, and someone who I think will, he already plays with a mean, nasty disposition. He's kind of got that Mays toughness, and part of that's just growing up Cade's younger brother. I mean, you get picked on when you're a kid, and learn to fight back. So, I think Cooper will be fine. It's just one of those things, when you get those ankle injuries, Hubs, they just linger, especially with the high ones.
Well, they do, and Rob, that's a concern for Tennessee, because there's clearly they're at their best when Cooper Mays is one of the five on the field. I mean, that I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just his knowledge of the offense or his toughness or whatever. And I'm not knocking on Jerome Carbon, but I think it's pretty obvious when watching them that they're the most efficient offensively when Cooper Mays is lined up at center for them.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, and it hurts Jerome because that's not fair to really criticize him, because he's a guard. I mean, he's played, he's cross-trained some, but I mean, center's a much different position. I mean, than guard. A lot more to worry about, a lot more responsibilities. And yeah, I mean, I think that's on any team. That's a key spot if you're going to lose somebody to injury.
Well, and then this up-tempo offense, they ask the center to do everything, in terms of setting it up and getting it ready to go that way. So going to be without him this week. We'll see how long that ankle takes to repair or to heal, and when he might get back out there. All right, Vols since 1996 wants to know, was Joe really hurt? Is that why Josh Heupel didn't want to play him, or is that an excuse? Is Hendon and Joe splitting any with the number ones? And honestly, I think we need both Hendon and Joe as the season unfolds. This week, also, it feels like Joe has gotten more work than he has the last, week or two. I think we acknowledged earlier that Tennessee's best right now is Hendon Hooker, but it sounds like Joe is healthier, and it sounds like he's getting more work. And if they can't protect any better up front, they might end up needing multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Which is why, I think Harrison Bailey has to be ready. I mean, you could easily lose two guys. I mean, on any given, Saturday, you could lose a guy due to, a breakthrough case, and then lose a guy to injury, and all of a sudden you're, rolling out there with Bailey and the transfer walk on from UCF. So, The injury, with Joe is a bit, befuddling. I mean, they said ankle. He walked around with no boot. Now, a little caveat on that: Cooper didn't have a boot either. The first time around, has since been in a boot since then. But walked around with just flip flops on. Didn't walk with a limp. You and I saw him leaving the complex numerous times, but they just kept saying ankle. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like walking around, he's moving around. But again, I do think he's done more. Sounds like he's taken some more stuff with the number ones this week. I'm not saying he's taken a lot, but it sounds like he's done a little bit more with the number one offense this week. I Heart Vols. Our struggles as a program over the last decade plus have been well documented. But what's more frustrating to me is the fact that we as fans go into every season with absolutely no hope of beating Bama, Georgia, or Florida. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the reality that a generation of UT fans has never experienced anything like the Sugar Vols, the miracle at South Bend, or the 2001 win at the Swamp as a 2-touchdown or 3-touchdown underdog, and the fact that those types of wins don't appear to be on the horizon. Rob,
I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, you and I have experienced this firsthand, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason Tennessee struggles in recruiting. I mean, it's the guys in this region. They see who's going to the college football playoff, who's playing in Atlanta. And the last time Tennessee, the guy who was the quarterback the last time Tennessee played in Atlanta, hosts a radio show in town every day and has 3 kids. It's a generation.
Yeah. I mean, my son's 16. He hasn't seen them competitive. I don't know what other else comment to make. My son doesn't know it. I mean, he doesn't know
Tennessee. 19 and has never seen Tennessee play in New Year's Day bowl game.
I mean, so it is a generation lost.
When did they play in Tampa last? That was New Year's Day.
Yeah, that was a couple years. That was 5 years ago.
But they haven't played in a New Year's 6.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
in a big bowl game. I don't know when that'll happen, but my son's asked me a couple different times. Tennessee actually ever beat any of those teams? Like, yeah, they used to regularly.
Music City Bowl sounds good right now.
Yep. I mean, when I tell my son, remind him they beat Alabama 7 years in a row at one point in time, it's like talking about Greek mythology. He just can't get his head around it.
It's like talking about the JFK assassination, the grassy knoll, and all that good stuff.
Volgrad 05 wants to know, what will the kickoff time for Ole Miss be? Need to know for tailgate weekend planning purposes. I'm not sure I can handle another noon kick.
Noon.
I don't know.
Until otherwise, it's noon.
I think a lot will depend on, what happens this weekend. If Tennessee's a little more attractive with a win.
There's not a whole lot that weekend. In theory, if Tennessee were to show well at Missouri, that game, I'm telling you, I've looked at the schedule. I think there's a chance it could end up being 3:30, which tells me at worst case scenario, it's a 7 o'clock game. I just don't see it being noon.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it's noon, but part of that too depends on what Tennessee does this weekend, what Ole Miss does this weekend as well. How attractive is everybody there in that deal. And if it's CBS with 3.5-minute commercial breaks, that game will be over at 8:45 after a 3:30 kick.
At least it's at home.
Yes, that's right. The wide receiver Webb out of Georgia that's blowing up in recruiting. Does Coach Burns like him better? Which is why he has shifted the recruiting him over Caden Pope, or is Pope listening too much of the negative recruiting regarding the investigation and is no longer interested?
That's a good question. I think people have put that bug in his ear, but I don't think it's as much that. Caden Pope's kind of weird recruitment. Like, for a kid that literally puts up, PlayStation numbers every week, like, it's not like people are beating the door down for him.
It's odd.
It's very odd.
For a guy that productive, it is interesting that the rest of the SEC hasn't come calling. I mean, Auburn's been the other school you talk about. They just fired their receivers.
And it was at Mississippi State this past weekend.
Yeah. I think Tennessee certainly likes the Webb kid a lot and has liked him a lot. Do they like him more than Pope? Got one receiver spot at this point, feels like.
Yeah.
Now that may change depending on what your numbers look like. With
Yeah,
Pat
again, like
Mahomes.
the thing you got to keep in mind here is like whatever the number is, it can change based off the fact that let's say Tennessee loses 2 offensive linemen to the portal, and the new rule comes into effect, what everybody expects it to, and you can replace up to 7 kids that go in the portal at no hurt to you. Then they're gonna go and replace them with 2 kids in the portal on the offensive line. Like so, yeah, I mean, the number is the number until somebody leaves, and then I think the number changes.
Yep. Can't get right. 8402. Rob, through the years, it seems like we've had good coaches that just weren't the right fit here. Bob Shoop, Dave Clawson come to mind first. Who are some of the others that were really good coaches but just didn't work out here? What's the reason that fit didn't work? Does this happen everywhere? Also, vice versa. Can you think of any coaches that have almost been given up on but succeeded here?
I don't know about that's the bad. I think I would. I honestly can't really think of anybody. Maybe Tyson Helton. How good of a coach was he? I don't think is he better than a guy?
He was hamstrung his 1 year here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think he had any. But I'm not saying he's I don't think we know, but I don't think he was as bad as it looked that 1 year.
Yeah, in terms of guys who were almost given up on but succeeded here, Mike DeBoer's the first name that comes to mind for me.
That's a good one.
Everybody laughed at when he was hired because he was managing women's swimming or tennis or whatever sport he was managing at Michigan when he was done. So that one, in terms of a guy who was given up on or washed out or whatever, that seems that would be one that jumps out to me. At that point, I don't know that Harry Heastan was thought as a really good coach here just because he was grumpy and crotchety about everything in life. But he's gone on and did well at Notre Dame after the fact. I'm not saying he was necessarily a quote bad fit here, but it didn't work. A couple other guys that jump out. I think Dave Lawson was a good strength coach. I think that was a big mistake by Butch Jones and letting him go in the strength department.
And where's he at right now, Hubbard? ETSU with Randy Sanders.
That's where he's at. But I thought he was good. I thought he was good for Butch here. I thought that was I thought that was a move that didn't make a lot of sense. And John Jancic was they were a better defensive team under John Jancic than they were Bob Shoop.
Yes,
wasn't even close.
Yep, and so. Obviously, for other reasons, for John Jancic, they decided to move on there. But that would be another one who's a guy that just decided that from a personality standpoint, Butch felt like he needed to make a move and go elsewhere there. But he didn't better himself when he made that change with that departure there.
He came back off that field. Since it's 2 references to Tampa, he came back in off that field at Tampa and had that text from Dave Aranda saying, "Sorry, I'm going to LSU," because that Dave Aranda thing was done.
Yep. Yeah, he was coming here.
And he had that text saying, "I'm going to LSU." Well, hold on a minute. What do you need? Nothing. The wife wants to go to LSU.
and now he's at Baylor as a head coach, and that's why Bob Shoop ended up at Tennessee because they threw the kitchen sink at him at that point. But they were going down the road of Dave Aranda, which obviously he had success with a lot of really good players at LSU. And I think LSU misses Dave Aranda on the defensive side of the ball right now for sure. CD Vol wants to know, now that we're 4 games in, what's the one piece of advice you would give Coach Josh Heupel?
Recruit, and more recruit.
Yeah. I think that's my big, you got to tighten up your discipline on your penalties. That can't continue to be a problem. But the bottom line, Rob, is they need more talent. They need more Jimmys and Joes. But we knew that before you played game 1, right?
Yeah, and but I wrote this. I want to hear your opinion. I put it in the 3-2-1, but and I didn't do exhaustive research. But Florida's got like 8 or 9 guys this year, and it's early. Somebody else may emerge, but they got 8 or 9 guys that are potential draft picks, and 3 or 4 of those. And I'm talking juniors or seniors, and 3 or 4 of those are first, second round possibilities. How many do you think Tennessee has on the whole roster?
Oh, I mean, I don't
They
know.
don't. I don't think they have 10 right now. Do you? Did you get a point
No,
to? And say
no,
that guy's an NFL draft pick.
no. That's what you can. I mean, it's hard to sit here and look at a freshman and say he's going
Sure,
to play in the league. Do I
absolutely.
do I like some of those young guys? Sure, but I mean, you can't sit here and anoint that guy necessarily
Yeah, I mean,
in a
look
league
at a
right
guy like
now.
Emmanuel Mosley or Justin Coleman. Whoever thought they were going to be what they've been in the NFL? I mean,
Right,
I don't think any of us would have said that as freshmen or even sophomore, maybe even
right.
juniors.
So
Coleman when he was a senior.
some guys may develop there, but no, I mean, you can't sit here and go, okay, that guy's a lock. I mean, like you knew Trey Smith was a lock for the draft.
But you know,
But before he had the medical stuff, I mean, you knew that as his freshman year. Like, all right, that guy's an NFL draft pick.
Yeah, but those guys are rare.
and
Jamal
even
Lewis.
then, like
Jamal Lewis, you knew he was an NFL draft pick.
so much of it is where you land. I mean, going to a certain franchise. I mean, Trey's set up to play as long as he wants to play. You're at Kansas City. You got a soon-to-be Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, again, it's so much of it is where you land. Look at Ramon Foster. Ramon Foster, really good college player. If he goes to the Browns, does he play for a decade? I don't know. He goes to the Steelers, more stable. You play for a decade.
Yeah, but I think the overall thing the point Rob was making is when you look at Florida, you say from a talent standpoint, they've got X number of guys
Oh yeah,
who are going to
it
get
ain't
drafted.
close as far as Tennessee.
And how many does Tennessee have that right now you look at them and say that's going to be an NFL draft pick, regardless of what franchise picks them? Who do you look at on this roster right now and say he's going to get drafted in the draft? He's going to be an NFL draft.
Cade. I would throw Tyler Barron in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be that. But you start looking down. I mean, it's hard to find a bunch of guys where you say that guy's a definite NFL draft pick. Which goes back to the point of what you were saying as your advice to Josh Heupel, Austin: recruit some more. And they're going to have to hit some on the transfer portal too. I mean, they're going to have to find some help there. They can't make their entire living in that portal, as we've talked about. But Austin, they're going to need another handful of guys to come in and try to help them next year and continue to try to move things forward.
Yeah, and then when you think about none of that movement's going to happen until December at the earliest. Kids are going to start going in the portal when the season ends, and then Tennessee's got to be really dotting I's and crossing T's when December gets here because you got to close out the class of prep kids, but you also got to be so quick on kids that hit the portal. A lot of times kids are, they already have it kind of in mind where they want to go when they hit the portal. I'm not saying there's tampering. I'm just saying they've had a relationship with a coach at a previous stop and they just go, hey, I'm going to call coach so-and-so when I hit the portal and say, hey, I'd really like to come there now. And if he wants me, I'm done.
Yeah. Army clerk recruiting. Are they going to recruit any more quarterbacks? What do you think? You think that's you think it's portal? I think it's portal life, right? I don't think there's a high school kid out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would not to close the door 100% on high school kids. Just because you don't know what it's going to look like. What if Joe don't play? What if Joe decides, I'm going back to Florida? And then Harrison Bailey's like, I'm not played. I'm out of here. Then because those kids hit the portal, you could bring one in portal guy and then add it with like a more, a kind of a developmental high school guy that's not as good as Taven or, something like that. I mean, I'm just saying like there's options, but it all depends on who's still here.
Yeah. Just the question is, can they find a high school quarterback this late in the game that they like?
Sure.
It would be a guy that has to really develop and show up, in his senior year and show out there. 10 Vol 2 wants to know why was Darnell Wright throwing a tennis ball up in the air on Tennessee Prime? Nervous energy, I guess. I don't know. He played with a tennis ball before he got there. He played with it after the show was over. It didn't bother me. I was enjoying this conversation, and he talked more in 45 minutes there than he did after I made a 4-hour drive up to talk to him in West Virginia, Austin. So I don't know why he was doing that, but he fidgeted with it the entire show for whatever reason. All right. Can't get right. 8402. Arkansas beat a top 10 team this past Saturday, something Tennessee hasn't accomplished in 15 years. What has Arkansas done right that Tennessee's not been able to do? I know that this Arkansas success may not be sustainable for the long term, but to see them achieve the success so fast into Pittman's tenure is a slap in the face to all fans for the last decade plus. Is this current staff capable of getting us over that drought?
Nobody knows. I'll say this: what Arkansas has done is Sam Pittman. Listen, every coach has got a little bit of an ego, okay? But Sam Pittman checked the ego at the door, took less money because he wanted to be a head coach, and then said, "Hey, give me more money for my staff." And he went there and hired Barry Odom, Kendall Briles. He's got really competent coordinators. He's got, position coaches. There's a buy-in with those kids. They all love playing for Sam Pittman, just like the O-lineman here, loved playing for Sam Pittman. The O-lineman at Georgia loved playing for Sam Pittman. That whole team loves playing for Sam Pittman. So there's a buy-in, there's an excitement, and there's an energy. But I get it. Arkansas is what Tennessee fans are just, banging their head against the wall for, because, why? To me, it's how is Tennessee? Law of averages tell you that you can kind of catch a heater and find a hot game, and play your best and be in the game. I mean, look how many times Lane found himself in the game in 2009, and then, Butch was competitive. Tennessee's not just been competitive against these, programs for the last 4 years. It's been pitiful.
Quarterback play. Felipe Franks, Rob, wasn't great, but they got better quarterback play out of Felipe Franks in a transfer last year than Tennessee got out of anybody on their roster.
They hired the right guy and they got solid quarterback play.
Yep.
I mean,
and that's a good staff. I mean, a head coach who is passionate about being there, who put a good staff together and got quick quarterback play. That jump starts your rebuild. That jump starts your belief, because they found a way to win a couple games because the quarterback made a couple plays for them.
Which goes back to what we talked about the last few weeks. That's why you have to take as many quarterbacks as it takes, whatever it takes to get that fixed.
Yep. All right, let's run through a couple more here before we get out the door. What's up with the tarp curtains on the sidelines? If they aren't blocking the other team from seeing their signals, which they aren't, then what's the purpose? And so the upstairs people don't see the signals and try to pick up and figure out what they are and steal those signals. There have been people in the past. I know people in the past at Tennessee that have stolen some signals based on their binoculars and what they viewed in the press box. So that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to prevent the other team's upstairs eyeballs from seeing the signals to figure out who's the dummy signaler, who's the real signaler, who's signaling what, and can they pick up on an indicator to know what some of those signals are. So that's why they do that. All right, Rob, rank these from most likely to least likely. Gets Carson Wallace, Julian Phillips, Dylan Mitchell, Chandler Jackson, and what's Ernest's last name?
Uday.
All right, roll.
I'll go Wallace and Phillips at the top of the list, because they're the two that have been here on official visits in the last few weeks. Chandler Jackson just got offered. I don't really have a lot of intel on that recruitment right now. Uday is all over the place, and Tennessee's in there swinging with Dylan Mitchell. I would put him, since he's the other kid that has been in here for an official visit, I would default put him third. But I mean, AP's better at like putting percentages on recruitments than anybody.
They're getting them all, Brent. They're getting them all.
You're 50 Cent gifting all of them? Is that what you're saying there, AP?
No, I'm not 50 Cent. They're not getting any of them. They're not getting any of them.
All right. At Mum Power wants to know, if Carvin goes down, who plays center and how tough would that make things?
AP might play center.
Parker Ball, baby. Give me Parker Ball.
Jackson Lampley, Parker Ball. Who else is there to move in there? I mean, I guess Ollie Lane would go to center. Lane would be where they would go.
Honestly, Cade could play it in a heartbeat. He played it at Georgia for a game. That's probably what I would do. It all starts with the center. Yeah,
but I don't know. He's not ripped a bit in this offense at center. I don't know how much he would. I guess he could make all of the declares that they have to make. I'm not sure about that. But talent-wise, yes. All right.
Cade?
No. Secondly, I predict Hyatt has a breakout game at Missouri. He's got way too much talent not to have a breakout game. You think he's close to busting out, AP?
Until he does it now.
Okay. Bud Wrigley wants to know, Austin, you have mentioned before that uniform numbers are important to these players. I hate the fact that players can have the same number on offense and defense, doing the double number things. I get there are too many players. But when you have guys who play special teams as well, don't you need to make sure there's no conflict? I also know that they kill for single-digit numbers, but how can we ensure nothing like the punt return debacle happens again? I have an answer there. Take Trayvon Flowers out of punt return.
Or make him switch back to 25 or whatever number he wore before he wore 1.
Yeah, but if Theo Jackson's your punt safe guy, let him be your punt safe guy, then Velus Jones fields every other punt. I mean, if it's got punt return on it, don't you want Velus Jones fielding the ball? And if it's punt safe, just tell Theo Jackson to go back there and catch it. Then your situation resolved. That's a sideline error that should not happen. Again, there's 42 guys over there wearing orange polos. Somebody's got to prevent that from happening.
But there's also 3 that are wearing blue, red, and green.
I understand that, but I mean, I'm not a double numbers fan because from a spotter standpoint, it's dang near. And on special teams, it drives you crazy because is it Danico Slaughter? Is it Javonte Payton? Is it Velus Jones? Is it Trayvon Flowers?
Unless they outlaw it, kids are going to continue to do it because you got one guy on defense that wants to wear number 3, and some recruit is on the offense that wants number 3, and
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to go away anytime soon. That's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast here at Volquest.com, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Plenty of coverage coming up at Volquest throughout the day today. Rob's got the matchup piece today. Rob, Vol's getting an edge in anything?
Yeah, I mean, Missouri's defense is trash.
Yeah, they've not been very good against the run, that's for sure. So
and it's not like they played a powerhouse schedule either. I mean, they played Kentucky, Boston College, Southeast Missouri State, and who's the other direction?
Central Michigan.
What's the fearless prediction this week? You got the Vols?
Can't spoil it.
Can't spoil the fearless prediction, and will not spoil it.
He's picking the Vols.
That's coming up later today. We'll have Josh Heupel's video from press conference coming up later today as well. A little recruiting news, full coverage on Friday with the War Room and our predictions and 10 things I think, and maybe a little more golf coverage coming up over the weekend.
And the year to date recap on game balls.
We'll see how that goes coming up throughout the day today. And then obviously we'll have full coverage of Tennessee and Missouri coming up on Saturday. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast every week right here on Volquest.